Hi, my name is Patrick Reagan. Welcome to the first practice quiz for the A+ 1102 exam. This quiz represents 25 typical questions for the 1102 A+ exam. As you go through these questions, you may pause the video if you need more time to think through the question. Remember, don't try to remember each question and answer, but try to understand why the answer is the right answer. Each answer will also give a reference to the video where the answer can be found. Question 1. The courts determined that a court case can no longer go forward because of the handling of evidence. What was most likely the problem with the investigation? Answer: chain of custody. The chain of custody refers to the chronological documentation or paper trail showing the collection, control, transfer, analysis, and disposition of physical and electronic evidence. It is essential to maintain a proper chain of custody for legal proceedings to ensure that the integrity and admissibility of evidence. If there are gaps or irregularities in the chain of custody, it can raise doubts about the authenticity and reliability of the evidence, leading to potential legal challenges. Question 2. Which of the following methods are supported by the majority of current Wi-Fi devices that does not sacrifice security? Answer: WPA3. WPA3, which was released in 2018, is the latest and most secure Wi-Fi protected access security protocol. WPA3 Personal provides better protections to individual users by providing more robust password-based authentication. While MAC filtering controls which devices can connect to the network based on the MAC address, it does not provide encryption or data privacy and can be easily bypassed by spoofing or changing the MAC address to match those on the whitelist or blacklist. Question 3. Which of the following is an advantage of using WPA2 instead of WPA3? Answer: device compatibility. Older devices may not support WPA3. In those situations, you will need to upgrade or replace those devices or use WPA2. Question 4. You got authorization from the Change Advisory Board to make a change. After you successfully implement the change, what should you do next? Answer: document the date and time of change was completed. After the change was successful, you should document the date and time that the change was completed. Question 5. When you add a second monitor, where do you go to extend the display in Windows? Answer: System. In Windows, you would select Start, Settings, System, Display. Question 6. You are generating a new guideline to address use of AI usage. Where would you specify the guidelines? Answer: acceptable use policy. The acceptable use policy outlines the rules and guidelines for the acceptable and responsible use of technology, software, and systems within an organization. Therefore, when you incorporate AI and how it accesses and processes data, you need to develop guidelines to control how AI is used. Question 7. What allows a company to send an email stating that the software they are using is an older version that will no longer be sold or supported? Answer: EOL. The EOL is the end of life statement or policy. Question 8. You have repeated pop-up advertising messages while browsing the internet. When you scan for malware, you cannot find any malware. What should you check next? Answer: browser plugins. Malicious or unwanted browser extensions or plugins can often be the cause of intrusive ads and pop-ups. Therefore, you should check the installed browser extensions and disable or remove any suspicious or unnecessary plugins. Question 9. You have a frequent small power outages that may last up to 5 minutes. Which of the following should you use to mitigate this issue? Answer: battery backup. The battery backup will provide consistent power, including filling in during the power outages. Question 10. How would you install a program from an ISO file? Answer: mount the ISO and run the installation file. After you download the ISO image, you would open File Explorer, right-click the file, and select Mount. You would then use the new virtual drive that represents the content of the ISO file and install the program. Question 11. Your user tries to access popular web pages but is redirected to unexpected websites. You clear the web browser and you look for suspicious add-ins. What should you do next? Answer: examine the local host file entries. The host file contains mappings of domain names to IP addresses that is accessed before DNS is checked. You should check for any suspicious or unauthorized entries in the file that could be causing the redirection. Question 12. You have a ticket to migrate the printer's port being used from USB to Ethernet so that multiple people can print to the printer. Which of the following should happen before the port is changed? Answer: determine the risk level of the change. You should first check to see the impact of the change. Before fulfilling the request, you need to look at the big picture. While this looks like a simple request, something may be pointing to the USB printer, and if possible, you may need to perform additional configuration changes. Question 13. What can you use to transfer a file to a user's workstation easily and with minimum disruption? Answer: SMB. The Server Message Block, or SMB protocol, is a network file sharing protocol that allows applications on a computer to read and write to files and to request services from server programs in a computer network. Question 14. You need to grant a user local administrative access to a computer running Windows. Which of the following control panel utilities or tools can be used to grant access to the user? Answer: User Accounts. In Windows 10 and 11, select Start, Settings, Accounts, Family and Other Users. Under Other Users, select Add Someone Else to this PC. Enter that person's Microsoft account information and follow the prompts. Question 15. You need to destroy SSDs that may contain sensitive information. Which of the following is the best method for physical destruction of the SSDs? Answer: shredding. Since the question specifies physical destruction, shredding is the only one that does that. Question 16. You need to access one of the Windows servers running in the data center. What is the best method to access the server? Answer: RDP. Remote Desktop Protocol, or RDP, can be used to access machines very similar to as you were sitting in front of the computer with the remote computer's desktop, start button, and task button. Question 17. You're installing a software on a computer, but it fails because it is incompatible with the HCL. Which of the following is most likely the cause of the failure? Choose 3 answers. Answer: CPU, RAM, version of Windows. When looking at a hardware compatibility list, or HCL, you would look for processor, RAM, storage, and version of Windows. Some games may have requirements for graphics. Question 18. A user is trying to install additional software and receives the UAC prompt. Which of the following is the best way to resolve the issue? Answer: add a user to the local administrators group. By adding the user account to the local administrators group, you grant the user elevated privileges that are necessary for installing software and making system-level changes. This allows the user to perform administrative tasks without encountering UAC prompts for each action. Question 19. You have a shared folder. When you create a new subfolder, only the user that can access the folder and its files. Which of the following will most likely allow all users to access the new folders? Answer: enabling inheritance. By enabling inheritance for all folders will allow the permissions from above to get to the same permissions, allowing access to the folder for all who has access to the above folder. Question 20. You're installing RAM on a new workstation and needs to protect against electrostatic discharge. Which should you use? Answer: ESD strap. Electrostatic electricity is the potential electrical charge created by friction and separation that can destroy or degrade an electronic component. The best way to avoid electrostatic discharge is to wear a properly grounded anti-static wrist strap. Question 21. Which of the following Mac OS features can help you close an application that has stopped responding? Answer: force quit. If the application is not responding on a Mac OS, force quit is the option to close unresponsive applications. Question 22. Which of the following would most likely extend the life of a device? Answer: proper ventilation. Proper ventilation helps prevent the device from overheating, which can be a common cause of hardware failure. Question 23. You cannot print on a local printer that is connected to a remote computer. Which of the tools should you run on the local computer to restart the print spooler? Answer: services. The Services console, which is an administrative or Windows tool, is used to manage services including the print spooler service. Question 24. What command will show all hidden files and directories from a Windows command prompt? Answer: dir/ah. When using the dir command, the /ah shows attribute hidden. You can also perform dir/a. You will also see all files. Question 25. Which of the following would be used in a small office environment? Answer: workgroup. A workgroup has all computers as peers with no domain controllers. It can be found in a small office with a handful of computers. Thank you for watching this video. The next video will be 1102, practice exam number 2. Thank you.